Hello, hello. What's up, everyone? Welcome in to Guru's podcast. I am your host, Spencer the Guru, here with my co-host, Commissioner Crook. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, Guru. How you been doing today?
It's good to hear, Commish. Been doing well. All right. So, gonna tell us a little bit about ourselves. We're both from Lafayette, Louisiana. That's where we're doing the show from, and we both have a big passion for fantasy football.
Yeah, we do.
Been playing it for many years, and have won several championships, and we're ready to help you guys get to the top of y'all's leagues, ready to win y'all some championships, and ready to ready to get this show on the road. Not gonna spend too much time here talking about ourselves. We're ready to get the podcast underway here. So, Crook, before we get started, I'd like to ask you, for the early rounds, what kind of players do you like to target?
I like to target the safe, reliable guys that are going to come in, get right to the point. They're going to get fed early and often. And they're going to get the yards on a consistent basis. Somebody that like DJ or Bell. I know you like DJ a little bit more than I do this year.
I do.
I'm a little higher on Bell because, I mean, let's face it, it's Le'Veon Bell. He's going to get his catches. He's going to get the runs, and there's no other running back in the league, maybe besides Gurley, who's just like him. But tell me why you would be over on the DJ side of the draft pick versus the Le'Veon Bell.
The reason why is the key is to get safe, consistent players with upside. And I realize that DJ missed off last season with a wrist injury. However, prior to that, he was elite. He was the top running back in all of fantasy. He's arguably the only guy in the NFL right now that's capable of getting 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards. I know he just got Saquon Barkley into the mix, so he could get to that, but he's only a rookie right now. So I wouldn't quite put enough trust in him to be like that top 4 early round guy, you know.
You're talking about Saquon?
And, yeah, Saquon Barkley.
Sure.
And he's definitely a first rounder, even though he's a rookie. However, DJ is just a dynamic talent that I can't see myself passing up on if I have a top 2 pick. Whereas Le'Veon Bell is just concerning me because he's got a somewhat of a downward trend in his statistics right now. I noticed a lack of efficiency last season, where the season before, yes, he was suspended, but he was so efficient to where it didn't really matter. He still put up those RB1 numbers by year's end. He was the top guy almost, and if you average that out over 16 games, he was the best player, where last season he just wasn't nearly as efficient. And he also led the league in carries, which could be a concern. And then with his contract, it's still not resolved. I'm just not really feeling Le'Veon. I just don't feel like he's as safe as Gurley, DJ, and Zeke. And I also don't feel like he has quite as much upside due to his downfall in efficiency last season.
And I can see that what you mean by that, but personally, just with a guy like DJ, he's just on a worse team, worse defense, worse offense. Le'Veon Bell is a guy that's going to be on a team that's going to be, at least a 10-plus win season. They're going to give him the ball. He's going to catch the dump-offs. I mean, they still don't have a tight end. They're still looking for one. I think Vance McDonald is still out there, if I'm not mistaken.
He is.
So even outside of him, there's only Juju and Antonio Brown. Of course, Antonio Brown, everybody should be in your first-round picks. If you can get him at anywhere, by all means. But we're talking about Le'Veon and DJ right now. And personally, I just want the receiving and the consistency of what Bell's done year in, year out, and how healthy he has been over the past few years. I understand holding out from minicamp and all the OTAs and whatnot could come back to bite you in the behind, whatnot, down the road. But to me, it's just Le'Veon Bell. I'm going to have to go with my safe choice. DJ, worst team. Couple injuries after the knee injury, then the wrist last year. Let's just wait and see what happens and see if he can hold up to it. But I think if you can get either one of them, Spence, I'm sure you can agree, you'll be pretty happy if you do end up with one of them, right?
Right. If we get either one in the top 4, we're not complaining. I mean, I'm not a Le'Veon guy this year, but if I have 4th pick and DJ, Zeke, and Gurley are gone, yes. If they're all gone, then, I've got to take Le'Veon, even though I'm not really feeling him this year. But I'm sure you can agree with me on this, that Gurley is the top player in fantasy right now.
If you have the number 1 overall pick, you take Todd Gurley.
Right.
I think he could honestly get the 1,000 and 1,000 this year. I really do. That offense is great. Jared Goff, he's an up-and-comer. I mean, he's out there. Last year made me a believer. I think Jared Goff can definitely take the next step in year 3.
Right, and also their head coach, Sean McVay, is an offensive mastermind. Kind of reminds me of
Completely.
Sean Payton. Could really take those players to the next level, especially Todd Gurley, because he has no committee. He's the sole workhorse back. They love going to him, especially in the screen game. He's really taking his game to the next level.
Correct.
And I feel like he's the safest player on the board with the most upside. So
I
if
mean,
I have number one, especially PPR, I'm going Gurley.
Yeah, Todd Gurley's definitely that guy that I'm taking. Now, they did draft that John Kelly guy out of Tennessee, but he's somebody, if you're in a 12-man league, don't worry about drafting handcuffs. And maybe in later episodes we can talk about handcuffs. I'm not a big believer in handcuffs.
I'm not either. I prefer to go with rookies with upside in the later rounds, which we'll touch on later in the show.
For sure. But just a name to keep an eye on, John Kelly, maybe later on if you put making a push. Spencer, you could probably agree making a push towards the fantasy playoffs. You can maybe think about having a handcuff around that time. But that's neither here nor there. We'll talk about it later in a different podcast.
For sure. And another debate I've been getting in a lot of live feeds is Saquon Barkley versus Alvin Kamara. I've been getting a lot of people asking me that. I'm more on board with Saquon because I feel like he's going to get more carries in that Giants offense. He's gonna have no committee. When Kamara comes back, he's gonna be fighting with Ingram. And also Saquon's a little bit bigger back. He just seems to be more like that workhorse type mold. And I just feel like he's just got more upside and is probably a safer pick as well because of Kamara's small frame could possibly lead to injury. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Kamara, I can tell you this. I mean, he's definitely a hell of a running back. His averages last year were some of the best averages every time he touched the ball.
Right, he's definitely an electric
player. Completely. He reminds me a lot of one of my favorite running backs of all time, Jamal Charles. Right. if you watched him last year, he was that guy. But what you're saying about Barkley, as far as him being that every down back, the guy that can be on the field first through third down, I definitely can agree with that. But my thing is that I would probably take Barkley over Kamara in the first round, and the reason being is that Kamara, his averages were so much of an outlier compared to what a traditional 3-down back would be. I mean, Kamara is as big as you can search it right now. Mark Ingram's weight and Alvin Kamara's weight, pretty much spot on in comparison to each other. They're right around the same weight, but it's the way they're built. Kamara's more slender as far as Ingram being more of like a thumb. He's a thumper. He's ready to go downfield. Kamara can catch that edge. He reminds me a lot of Pierre Thomas in a lot of ways in the way that he runs that offense. But
it's more of a thunder and lightning thing, where with Saquon, he's the thunder and the lightning.
Exactly.
He does it all.
Yeah,
That's
he's
why
the storm.
I feel like he's better. Right?
Yeah, he's the storm. I mean, we come from Louisiana, and then out here we get a lot of hurricanes. And if anything, Saquon the Hurricane Barkley might just
the perfect
do everything.
Storm, right?
Exactly. And Kamara, I just don't personally feel that he should be going in the first round. I know it's not going to be a very popular opinion. It's just, as far as me, I want a guy that can get on the field first through third down. Your Gurleys, your Bells, your Ezekiel Elliott's. Hell, even we were just discussing before the show, we were talking about Melvin Gordon and how, him out there, he really doesn't have a whole lot of people to contend with in that backfield like the other guys, the latter of those guys have been.
Right, for sure. I still feel like Kamara is a first rounder in PPR due to the fact he's going to catch a ton of passes in the Saints offense. But in standard, I could see where I'd be nervous about taking him in the first. I feel like they have safer players out there, such as Leonard Fournette or even Dalvin Cook. I know Dalvin Cook's coming off a torn ACL, but his rehab's going really well. And once he's back in there, he's the 3-down guy. People talk about Latavius Murray, but he's not nearly as talented as Dalvin Cook. There's no way the Vikings are going to waste their time with him over Dalvin Cook.
The Vikings have also, over the years, they've taken even the injuries that Adrian Peterson has suffered to his knee and had him come back relatively quick. Yes, Adrian Peterson is a god amongst men for sure as far as how he came back from injuries. But I do see the Vikings being able to take care of Dalvin Cook's knee injury in the right way and making sure that he comes back full and healthy. Because when he was on the field last year, he was looking amazing. Everybody was like, oh my God, why didn't I draft him? And then next thing you know, after he gets hurt, everybody shifted their view to Kamara. And fantasy football, I mean, Spencer, you could probably agree with this. It's what have you done for me lately? And Kamara has been that lately guy. But I'm telling you now, from my perspective, PPR or standard or not, I don't know if I'm exactly ready to take Kamara in that first round, upper echelons of players. That's just my opinion. I know some people might feel a little different about it come season and draft time, but that's all you. I mean, you if you feel, let me say how to say this.
Right, a lot of it is trusting your gut.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm getting
That's
at.
the key
Thank
to
you.
a lot of fantasy football is identifying the players you want, trusting your gut, and
going
going with
with it.
them and beating the people to the punch. That the ones that they were like, I had Alvin Kamara in my 16-man keeper league last year, got him in the later rounds, and everyone's like, oh man, Kamara. Like, well, I identified him in the late rounds. I got him on my squad now, and I had an injury.
Exactly.
It was to, I think, Jay Ajayi, and I just plugged Kamara in, and yes, that was a rare mishap for me in the early rounds, but I covered myself with an elite dynamic rookie in Alvin Kamara. So it didn't even matter. And I also had Kareem Hunt, who I took as my RB2. So I had those two. So I was set at RB, even though my preseason RB1, Jay Ajayi, didn't go as expected.
Yeah, I remember keeping last year. I kept Jay Ajayi in one of my keeper leagues, and
right, he was my keeper in that league as well. For this season, I'll be keeping Mr. Alvin Kamara and hoping he repeats last season. But I see a bit of a decline, but he's still going to be.
So, Spencer, let me ask you to your original question: who are you going with, Barkley or Kamara, if you had the choice in the first round, or even the second?
But as far as that, I'm definitely going Barkley.
Yeah.
He's the perfect storm.
I think so too. I think I'm going with Barkley as well.
Right. And then let's shift gears here and talk more about. We haven't really touched much on wide receivers yet. I'm personally not too big on taking a receiver in the first, unless you have a mid-round pick. But guys that I really like in the second round are Michael Thomas, Devontae Adams, and a guy that a lot of people are sleeping on that's going near the late second, sometimes even the third I've been seeing. And to me, it's nuts because this guy is an elite WR1 who produces every year. Had a bit of a down year last year, but his quarterback's going to be fully healthy this year, and that is Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yeah, Mike Evans was an animal, not last year, the year before. I mean, he gave us numbers that everybody could have been satisfied with. And just last year, just the whole team, it seemed like the whole Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, did I say Tampa? Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think their whole team just kind of had a mishap, a bad year. This year, I feel like they're going to come back and be a little bit more
right.
strong.
Last year, they had all the expectations. A lot of people picking them to win the NFC South. But this season, they're going to be the underdog. They have nothing to lose. I mean,
Exactly.
they're going to. I definitely see their players doing better, especially Mike Evans. He's an elite dynamic talent. He's going to produce.
I'm with you
definitely
on that.
a great value in the mid to late second.
But let me ask you this. If you had to choose over Keenan Allen or Mike Evans, who are you going to go with, Spencer?
I'm definitely going with Mike Evans. I feel like he's a safer player who has more upside. I feel like Keenan Allen may have hit his peak last year. I know he's still young, but he's had a long list of injuries. Not too high on him. Has limited touchdown upside. He is a PPR gem, though. He's a good mid to late second round. Similar to Evans, however, if I had to choose between them, I'm going Evans because I feel like he's got a higher ceiling for sure. Definitely has double-digit TD upside and has a better health track record.
Right. And not to jump too far back into what we were talking about, but if you had in the first round, who are you choosing? OBJ, Antonio Brown, or the man himself, DeAndre Hopkins? I mean, who had a great year last year as well.
This is where I'm different than a lot of your typical general Consheepses. They're all telling you to go with AB. You gotta stay away from the sheep, man.
Yeah.
You can't be a sheep.
But continue.
And yeah, this is why I'm going DeAndre Hopkins. I feel like he's got the most upside out of any wide receiver. He's consistent.
No
as
matter
long as he's
the
got
quarterback.
a decent quarterback. The one year he wasn't good
With
when
Brian Hoyer.
It was him and Trashweiler, I believe.
Oh,
Brock
yeah.
Osweiler.
I was
who's
talking
better
about
known as Trashweiler.
I was talking about how with
But as
Hoyer.
long as he's got, even Tom Savage, he managed a decent year with him. When he had
Completely.
Deshaun Watson, which he'll have for the full year this year, he was insane. And then this year, I feel like he's going to be he's going to be an animal. I feel like he's going to have probably around 100 catches, 1,500 yards, 12 to 15 touchdowns. And I don't even think AB is going to top that because with Juju Smith-Schuster
eating into
in
his targets.
Pittsburgh offense, and then they also drafted a rookie in the second round.
Yep,
Those
Washington James.
Correct, yeah. Those guys are going to
They're
I'm not
eat
gonna.
into-
AB's still gonna be a solid first rounder, but they could hurt his numbers slightly for fantasy. That's why I'm going D Hop. Clear
Yep.
path to
I completely agree.
targets and touchdowns, more upside. Going with him as my number one receiver.
So
and
in the
fifth
first
overall
round,
player.
outside of the top, I mean, you on board with the first 5 picks should probably be all running backs. And then
I'm
after
actually going Hopkins 5th, and then AB 6 and Barkley 7th.
Okay,
That's
I
my
got you. I got
order
you.
in the early rounds. But yeah, we'll
You want to kind of move on? Let's maybe take a trip down to the 3rd to 5th round, maybe.
right.
Kinda
Yeah,
like
we
what we're
kind of
thinking
spent a
in
lot of
them.
time here on these early rounds. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
kind of touch on these mid rounds because these are very important as well. Because I mean, yeah, you want to
Completely.
nail down those early rounds, but like I said, you can sometimes overcome an early injury as long as you take the right people throughout
Correct.
your draft. You've got to have a strong team,
Yep.
a good, complete fantasy squad, or else the injuries are going to bite you and you're not going to be able to cover yourself because you wasted picks on guys that don't produce. But let's
Let me
get
ask you
to it
this.
here and discuss.
Before we actually do get into
those
that, let me
players.
ask you, Spencer, do you like to go 0 RBs, 0 wide
Oh, no.
receivers, or do you like to do best player available?
I do best player available, but there's usually always an RB worth taking in the first day. I don't think I've ever done a draft really where I maybe done the first 2 rounds WR, but that's very rare.
Sure.
Every once in a while that'll happen where I'll have Hopkins and then they'll have a run on running backs and maybe like Michael Thomas will fall or
Right.
something.
And I guess more or less I'm
But
asking you for
other
like
than that,
later
there's
rounds.
no
Like
way.
after we get out of the first and second round, I'm talking more about after you get out of those rounds, of course, if you want to take a running back or a upper echelon's wide receiver, but later on, are you just taking best player available or are you trying to stick to a certain strict strategy as far as just taking a bunch of running backs and then doubling back and going wide receivers?
To me, the key in a lot of drafts is to not get pigeonholed into a certain strategy because I feel like if you
Exactly.
do that,
Stay
you're
water.
gonna pass up on players that you want because they don't fit your strategy. Where it's like
Exactly.
you've got to try and just target the best available players
Completely
and
agree.
get those players that fit the consistent players with upside. You don't want to
Every
just
time.
waste a pick on someone that's you
Completely
don't
not.
really want, but you say, oh, I've got to go WR, but let's say there's a WR you don't want, and you pass up on, let's say, Joe Mixon in the 3rd round,
Right.
who you like better, but it's like that's
You thought that you
not
needed a wide
going
receiver.
to work out. Yeah, because that
Exactly.
receiver will likely bust, and then one of your top 2 running backs might get injured. So then 2 of your top 3 picks are worthless. And that's
Exactly.
not the way to build your team. You want to build it to where you have
Stay
safe,
fluid.
consistent players. And there are injuries that are going to come up. Obviously, it's football. No one's perfect. No one can stay healthy every season. Even the best of them get hurt every now and
Exactly.
then.
If you play this game long enough, you're going to catch an injury.
Right.
One
Even Drew
season or
Brees
not.
and Tom Brady have had injuries
Exactly.
before. It's very rare, but I mean, you just got to be prepared for that, and you've got to build a complete dominant team from the ground up.
So I heard you say Mixon, but in the 3rd round, I got a couple guys I want to ask you about. If you had the choice between Aaron Rodgers, Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs, or Adam Thielen, who are you going in the 3rd round?
I'm definitely going Mixon there, and if he's gone, best available receivers usually are Tyreek Hill, Doug Baldwin, and Thielen. And it seems like Hill and Baldwin go a little higher sometimes, but for PPR, Thielen's a solid guy. I mean,
Yep.
he's
He's
going to
gonna
get
eat
his
underneath.
Gonna get his catches. He's not a big touchdown guy though, so I feel like he's getting somewhat overdrafted in PPR because of he's getting so much love from his numbers from last year. We don't want to pay for last year's production. However, he's a young player, so he may not have yet hit his peak.
Oh,
I mean, it's not
still
like
think
he's
he
an
has-
old guy or anything. So I
Completely.
mean, he's definitely worth taking there in the 3rd round, especially in PPR.
Right, but you're saying your favorite guy in the 3rd round would be Joe Mixon. That's who you're targeting?
Definitely, especially if I took a receiver in the first 2 rounds. But even if I did go RB, if Mixon's there in the mid to late 30s, someone I just can't really pass up on because I feel like he's a good, not really post-hype. We're going to discuss post-hype sleepers later on, but he's a
Sure.
guy that's, he's definitely got the potential to be a top 10 running back, and you're getting him there in the 3rd. And he's got a clear path to carries, minimal committee. They still have Giovanni Bernard, but he's kind of settled into his 3rd down role.
Right,
Mixon's their guy. He's going to get all the carry. Then he also gets some catches. I mean, because they really seem to like him in Cincy, and they've got an improved offensive line now, and the offense should be much improved this year, which in turn will allow Mixon to live up to his potential.
Right. And I see where you're going with that, but I think that from my perspective, if I'm in the 3rd round and I just grab one of the upper echelon running backs and then probably come back in the 2nd round, I might have grabbed another running back just depending on who's there. In the 3rd round, I could definitely see myself living happy with Adam Thielen or Tyreek Hill, the guys that
Definitely.
they're going to get their PPR receptions.
Right.
And they can see Tyreek Hill can give you the long ball. I mean, he was the only receiver to average, I think, like receptions for over 20 yards. I think it was like 20 yards per reception.
Right, definitely great on those deep balls. And he's so
Exactly.
fast that he can get into the end zone a lot of times.
Exactly.
And also, you brought up Aaron Rodgers. That's where a lot of people fall into that trap to where they want to secure that quarterback, which it is important to have an elite quarterback. You don't have to, but you want to make sure you have a top flight quarterback because they do score a lot of points. However, in PPR, quarterbacks can't catch the ball, so I don't see the point in drafting a quarterback in the first 3 rounds.
Sure.
In standard leagues, I could maybe see it because
or if your league has bonuses,
don't get the reception. But in PPR, where you got the receivers, even the running backs catching balls, I just don't see where a quarterback's going to score you enough points to be worth taking that high, especially considering how deep the position is.
I can see what you're going with that. I just think that if I have the choice over the 20th wide receiver or the 15th running back, sometimes that's probably what makes a lot of guys tend to want to pick Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you're good for 35 touchdowns and 4,000 yards. Would you completely hate on somebody if they did do that and they didn't want to take, say, Doug Baldwin? Would you take Doug Baldwin over Aaron Rodgers?
Probably
I
would.
Yeah,
for sure.
I hear that.
I could see someone maybe taking Rodgers over Stephon Diggs because Diggs is like, the number 2 option on that team with Thielen, and then you've got Hilton, T.Y. Hilton, a guy I'm staying far away from until Andrew Luck proves himself. I'd rather a Rodgers over a guy like that because at least you know what you're getting with Rodgers.
Sure.
You're not wasting a pick.
Exactly.
You're kind of reaching, but it's not a waste,
But moving on, like, who would you think to take? I've seen a lot of guys being taken in a lot of mock drafts. A lot of the same guys being taken around the 5th round. I think me and you before the show we talked about how there's one guy in the 5th round that we both really like, and his name's Darius Geis. He was drafted. He slipped a little bit in the draft, but I think this year and where he went with the addition of Alex Smith out there in Washington and the type of runner that Darius Geis is, I think if you can grab him in the 5th, you're getting a potential first-round productive running back in the 5th round.
For sure. Definitely got to target those rookies with upside there. I mean, definitely Darius Geis. He's honestly, after Saquon, he's now my second favorite rookie running back because I was analyzing it the other day. And I feel like Rashad Penny could be an elite talent. However, with that Seahawks O-line, it could limit his upside, similar to what happened to Mixon last year. Could hurt his efficiency. And also, the other guy that a lot of people are hyping up is Ronald Jones. However, he doesn't seem to be catching on as quickly as people were thinking because there's been talk now that it could end up being a 3-head committee with Charles Sims and Peyton Barber. I honestly don't feel like that's going to be a problem. I feel like Rojo, once he gels with the offense, he'll be the guy.
Sure.
However, for now, I just don't feel like he's worth taking quite as high. Let's say a Geis who's catching on really quickly. He's an elite dynamic talent in a good offense to succeed with the Redskins. I feel like Geis is going to have a huge year. Not the best at catching balls, but they already said they're comfortable with him in pass protection. So I feel like he's definitely got a shot to play all 3 downs and be that elite game-changing rookie running back similar to what Kareem Hunt was last season.
I can get behind that. I love Darius Geis, like I said before, in the 5th round. It's somebody that can definitely give me first-round production. Drafting him in the 5th round, I would fall in love with time and time again. I mean, we're always looking for that.
Great flex play for sure.
Completely, because you should maybe at that time you already have 2 top wide receivers or maybe 2 running backs, by the time you get into the 5th round.
Right, he'd most likely be a flex, but I mean...
Exactly, that's what I'm getting at, is that he would probably be a flex.
Right.
I'll look around in my 7th round, I seem to have been taking Trey Burton of the Chicago Bears. I seem to be taking him a lot in the 7th round, excuse me. What do you think about taking him that high?
Right, that's definitely something we need to touch on is where to take these tight ends because I see a lot of people reaching on tight ends, especially Gronk, and I'm not a Gronk believer.
Sure,
I don't know
you told
about
me that.
I'm definitely not a Gronk believer, and I know you like your Chiefs and Travis Kelce. However, I feel like he's also going a little bit too high because I feel like you can get the guys like... Guys, I always keep getting Kyle Rudolph and the one you touched on, Trey Burton, because I feel like they're both safe players.
And you could probably get them in between the 7th and 10th round. Like that would
correct. And you can secure your running backs, wide receivers, and then get a solid tight end to seal your mid rounds and to cap that off. And then your team's pretty well set. And then after that, it's mainly to just try to focus on getting those late round gym rookies with upside, and then also the post type sleepers who are going to touch on.
Well, moving forward after that, let's see. Let me ask you this: who is your favorite mid to late kind of guy that I think we've maybe discussed it before earlier? I know I drafted him a lot in a lot of my mock drafts that I had done earlier today and in prior days before today. And his name's Nelson Aguilar. I know you're not a big fan of Alshon Jeffrey this year, as you talked about on your Instagram Live. But tell me some of the reasons why you're high on Aguilar this year.
I feel like Aguilar is just the younger, more dynamic player, and he's going to have time to work with Carson Wentz. Seemed to really get a connection going with him last year. He didn't do as well. Prior to that, it was deemed a bust by a lot of people, but last season he seemed to catch fire and really see he was a nice post-type sleeper. He caught fire and actually had a pretty solid year. Had a similar year to Jeffrey, who everyone's taken early, and I feel like Jeffrey's already hit his peak.
Yeah, and I think Jeffrey people are taking more or less around the 4th, 5th round.
Right, that's
3rd,
way
4th,
too early,
round.
guys. Do not take those guys. Do not take the Alshon Jeffreys, the Jordy Nelsons, the Kelvin Benjamins, the guys that have already hit
Stay away
peak.
from Jordy Nelson, everybody. He's over 30-something years old, and he's on the All-Star AARP team out there in the out there in Oakland. I mean, I get it. They're moving next year, and old Chucky got he built the team he wanted, but stay away from Jordy Nelson. Remember, he's off of what, an ACL injury a couple years back, Spencer, I believe?
I believe so.
It was ACL.
His health isn't on his side and age isn't either. Definitely not a player to target on your fantasy
I would
team.
stay away from Jordy Nelson, but that's just me. Do what you do. If you got a gut feeling, who am I to tell you what your gut's telling you to do? But from my perspective, I'm staying away from Jordy Nelson.
Right.
And I'd rather grab Aguilar in the 9th.
Right. He just doesn't seem like someone, unless they get reports in camp that he's looking young and spry like he used to, which, I mean, it's going to have to be a really convincing report, because a lot of those training camp reports, they exaggerate. But if I see it from like a really trusted source that he's looking good, I could maybe consider him. But as of now, he definitely doesn't fit my formula, and I'm staying far away from him.
Staying far away, throwing up the crucifix in front of him, trying to stay away from those Raiders. As we move forward, though, to the next round, who is somebody in the 10th round that you would like to go with? I mean, are you going to think about going rookies, or are you going to think about going a seasoned veteran that usually maybe hits its stride later on in the season? Because right now we're looking for depth. I mean, by this time,
and a guy that I feel like it's going way too late in drafts, who's going to be more than just depth. He's a very good flex play with RB2 upside. Another one of these rookies that we both like is Kerryon Johnson from the Detroit Lions. I feel like he's a great value in drafts right now. In one of your mocks, Commish, I believe he went in the 12th, and to me, that's highway robbery. There's no way that guy should be going that late. There's no way. Because all he's got in front of him is an aging LeGarrette Blount and a third down back in Theo Riddick, who they seem to be kind of phasing out at this point.
Yeah, and we all know Abdullah hasn't done anything or lived up to any of the hype. He might not even make it out of training camp.
No need to worry about Abdullah, guys.
If you're drafting
fantasy
Abdullah,
irrelevant.
Get rid of him. If you draft him at all this year, I'm sorry, sir. Put the computer away and step away. Stay away from Abdullah.
Exactly. And that's why y'all here at Guru's Podcast, we're going to get y'all to where y'all stay away from those kind of players and make sure to draft those consistent players. And then once all the consistent players are taken, take those rookies with upside.
Always. Because especially, and I want to let this be known to a lot of leagues as well, is that you should always play in a keeper league. I mean, if you draft well, Spencer, you probably agree with that. If you draft well, you should be rewarded the next year. Even if you finished last in your league, but you drafted, that guy, like I did a couple years ago. I didn't do too well, but I had OBJ in the 11th round. The next year, I got to keep him in the 10th round. At least I got a player and was able to keep him benefit from drafting a lucky lottery pick from last
for sure.
year. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you can help me out with saying that.
I agree with that. If you're in a serious league with people that also have that passion for fantasy, for sure, I definitely recommend doing a keeper league. Definitely keep the league together and stuff. However, if you're just doing a casual league with your coworkers or your drinking buddies or whatever, I'd probably just stick to redraft, because if you do keeper, then some people might not like it.
Yeah, it's always different.
But if you're looking to get serious in the fantasy, keep listening here to Guru's Podcast. We'll get you to the top and definitely get you past all the General Consheeps' BS. Don't worry about buying a magazine. Don't do that. It's not worth it. Waste of $8. Just tune in here to Guru's Podcast and Get your fantasy knowledge and
So
be ready to dominate your leagues.
So, I mean, we're talking about Kerryon Johnson, but who do you like more, Royce Freeman or Kerryon Johnson? Because Royce Freeman right now, I mean, he only has that Booker kid and I think a Henderson, Carlos Henderson, who I think is he injured or is he getting suspended?
He's not someone I'm targeting on my fantasy team.
It's not Carlos Henderson. It's D'Angelo Henderson. Excuse me. Last year they drafted 2 Hendersons, and it was D'Angelo Henderson. I believe that's the
I believe Carlos is the receiver.
Yeah,
but neither one of
Tech, as a matter of fact.
Right. Yeah, neither one of those I'm targeting for fantasy.
Sure.
That Broncos team is not very ideal. However, they are more of a run first, defensive minded team. So Royce Freeman fits that bill. I mean, he'll definitely have that C.J. Anderson role and. C.J. Anderson was a decent player with Denver, solid RB2 flex. So, I mean, I actually feel a little better about Royce Freeman. However, if Kerryon can officially leapfrog Blunt, like once he gets the endorsement from the coaching staff, I feel like he's a little more dynamic, so I'd probably go with him. But as of now, due to the depth chart situation, I'd go Royce.
Heard that. Yeah, I could definitely see that. I know I have read reports from OTAs and other organized team activities that have been going on that the coaching staff does really love Detroit's draft pick in Kerryon Johnson. Right. But let's keep it moving. You want to jump to, we just did like the 9th and 10th round. Let's do the 11th and 12th. Like, who's a guy in those rounds that you would maybe be predicting to take that you really like?
Right, these are some guys. These rounds can make or break your team, guys. I mean, if you decide to really wait on the tight end, David Njoku's a guy you could sneak in there in those rounds. And also,
very athletic.
Post-type sleepers are guys to target. Mike Williams, guys. He's one that I feel like really could bounce back in a big way this year. He was the 7th overall pick, guys. Don't forget that. With the L.A. Chargers last year. And he didn't really get to play too much because he was battling injuries, getting used to the offense. Where now he's got more clear path to target, especially with Hunter Henry injured. And now I just feel like he's ready to step into that role as that vertical threat second receiver there for Phillip Rivers. And I feel like they're more of a pass-first attack, so I feel like he's going to have a nice season. Could be a flex play, and you're getting him so late that it's a great value for sure.
Well, let's, instead of just doing a player versus a player, let's do a player versus a player versus a player for around this time, because you can maybe get one of these 3 players in these 2 rounds. At this point. What if we had Michael Gallup,
right? Definitely the late round gym rookies with upside. Michael Gallup fits that bill. He's definitely one.
We could do Kenny Galladay, Kenny G over out in Detroit in that whole scenario, and then we also have the other receiver we were just talking about. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on how we even just called him.
Mike Williams.
Mike Williams. I'm sorry. Who would you take out of those 3?
As of now, I would go Mike Williams because I really like him this year.
Even though he might be the number 2 wide receiver out there?
Yes, I feel like, with Hunter Henry going, Hunter Henry is probably going to be their number 2. But now that he's gone, they've got a lot of targets opened up that have opened up. So I feel like he's their guy now to take those.
Take the reins?
Yes, definitely. Because I'm not a believer in Travis Benjamin or Tyrell Williams. Those guys, they're okay, but there's more situational deep threats. Mike Williams is that vertical threat who's really going to rack up the yards. But Michael Gallup's definitely someone I really like. He's honestly my favorite out of the rookie receivers because of that great situation he's got in Dallas. The depth chart is clear.
He could walk into a first round. I mean, number 1 wide receiver position. Exactly. I mean, they did bring in Allen Hurns, but they lost Des Bryant. I mean, Des Bryant is Des Bryant. He was a hell of an athlete. We all get that. But he's kind of overstayed his welcome out in Dallas. They let him go. They draft a guy like Michael Gallup. I could really see Michael Gallup coming in and really exerting himself as the number 1 wide receiver in that offense because he doesn't have to be the feature wide receiver. They do still have Zeke. They still have Allen Hurns, but he can still maybe have that production that puts him into that wide receiver 1 category over in Dallas.
For sure. He's definitely the one to keep your eye on in training camp in the preseason. And if he establishes that role, I know Dallas is a run-first team there with Zeke, but if he can establish himself as that number 1, he's got a clear path to playing time and targets. He could get close to 1,000 yards, which in
his first
year,
year,
case, he'd be well worth a 12th round. I think actually a bargain.
That'd be more than a bargain, man. You know, that's what'd you call that? A highway heist?
Highway robbery.
Highway
like
robbery.
with Kerryon Johnson.
Right. So I mean, I guess we could kind of get on board with that. I'm personally not a big Mike Williams fan. I personally feel that even though Hunter Henry's gone out there in San Diego, and then they have Keenan Allen and a few other guys, to still maybe make up for it with. Moving on, who are some of these late round guys that you're really interested in? I'm talking 13th through 16th. Who's a guy that you just take a dart, put a blindfold on your head, and throw it at the wall? Who's a guy that you're ready to just draft that late and just tell your league, I did better than you this year?
Right, and that's another, just so that point in those later rounds that you've got to take. You don't waste your time on a kicker and defense, guys. I don't care if Jags defense is there. I don't care if Gostowski's there from the Patriots. Do not waste your time with those guys. Take these rookies with upside and these post-life sleepers, because while you think, you're just throwing a dart at a board, you might be potentially swinging your league. You might be winning a championship for yourself. And a guy that I definitely like that, and these are two rookie running backs that I feel like could be really special this year, especially Jordan Wilkins from the Colts, and also his teammate Nyheim Hines, especially for PPR. I feel I'm right now a little higher on Wilkins because I feel like he's got that early down role. He could have that early down role established because Marlon Mack's still battling injuries. So
nagging hamstrings and stuff
right.
like that.
So if Mac, it'll kind of depend on Mac's health. If Mac continues to have these health problems, then there's a good chance Wilkins will leapfrog him on the depth chart. Because it's not like Mac's an established veteran. He was a rookie himself last year and didn't really prove himself. Frank Gore, the old man, actually outdid him. I mean,
Frank Gore's probably the only 30-something-year-old running back that I would ever leave a draft with. Just saying, and even then, I'll probably staying away. But I see what you're getting at with Wilkins.
Right. It's just, but Marlon Mack he didn't wow me last year. So I feel like Wilkins could easily step in and be a RB4 type with flex potential some weeks, and then Nyheim Hines for PPR could be similar to a Duke Johnson type. He's a smaller guy. He's never going to be like your every down workhorse, but he's definitely a guy you could flex some weeks in PPR, and he's a guy that when he has a big week, it could swing your week.
Right. I think what you're getting at is he's not going to give you that touchdown upside that Wilkins may or may not even give you. But I think on the opposite end of where you're at with Wilkins, I'm right there with you on the Nyheim Hines. I personally like Nyheim Hines, just being that he could give us, at worst, he can maybe give us Christian McCaffrey numbers that he got last year,
Right, and Christian McCaffrey was a solid RB2 for PPR, and if Hines does that and you get him in the 13th, that could win your league.
And then if you are playing, because I know some of our listeners might also be playing in leagues that they're more versed in and being more aggressive and competitive in, and if you are in a keeper league and Nyheim Hines just comes out and breaks out and does his thing, and even Wilkins himself, if he comes out and he balls and he makes all the plays, and you got either one of those in the 13th, 14th, 15th round, the next year you have a RB2 coming out the gate as a keeper. So that's just something also to keep in mind.
Yes, indeed. All right. So,
that
about wraps it up. I mean, that's where the main focus is here, and the main theme, we just got to keep hammering this point home. Early rounds, safe, consistent players with upside. And you get to these mid rounds, take your safe players if they're still there. And if they're not there, go with those rookies with upside.
And stay fluid. Don't go in there thinking that I got to stick to a 0 RB, 0 wide receiver.
Yeah. Do not go into a pigeonholed strategy.
Right. You know what? One thing that I don't like that people do is that, they have their ranks, they have their cheat sheets, they're crossing lines off, they find themselves, and this is the problem, they got 3 running backs and 1 wide receiver, and they feel that, oh my God, I have to draft another wide receiver. Don't feel that way. I just want to get this point across before we get out of here, and that point is, take the 4th running back. If he's better than the second wide receiver that you need, take the 4th running back. The reason being is, your league is not going to be won in the draft. It's not. You got to stay water. You got to
stay active throughout the year, checking that waiver wire, checking your trades. We're going to do another episode later on about how to win your league in the waiver wire and the trades. The draft is definitely important, though, because you've got to build your foundation with the draft.
But if you have equity and players to turn around, like say you have guys in the 5th, or 6th round and you have 3 other running backs that you're starting and flexing, and you have Darius Geis that's just balling out, why not just turn around and say, hey, man, I'll trade you Darius Geis for Mike Evans. You want to take a deal? Because your other wide receiver is Brandon Cooks, and then you got some rookie that's not, like, say, DJ Moore is in your wide receiver 2 slot, and he's not doing anything, and you got too many running backs, one's on your bench just putting up 20 points.
Right, you can always swing trades at someone, and injuries come up. A lot of times that kind of stuff takes care of itself.
Completely agree.
But yeah, definitely nail down that draft, guys. It's very important. Do not waste picks on players.
Best player available.
Right.
Don't forget it. And me and Spencer, we both agree you usually wait on quarterbacks, but hey, if Aaron Rodgers there in the 5th round, man, I don't think I could pass it up.
I wouldn't either. Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, if it was high upside QB is still there, sure.
Definitely.
I can't argue with that one. All right, well, that about wraps it up here.
Thank y'all for listening.
For sure. Thanks for tuning in to Guru's Podcast. It was fun. First episode is complete. See y'all later.